Here we go. We are now live.
White. How about Rashad
Hold
White?
on a second. Hold on. Don't start yelling out names. We're live right now, man.
Oh,
we are live.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a little retweet here. But when I decided that I wanted to talk about handcuffing, because I think handcuffing is an important thing, whether you do it or you don't do it. I actually strategically picked you, Geek, to do this podcast with me because I know you and I see this very differently. There's parts we agree on, there's parts we disagree on, but you were the right guy because you're going to bring an alternative viewpoint. And if I'm just spewing what I think is the right way to do it, I want the listeners to have another perspective on it. So I'm glad you're here, Geek. It's good to always podcast with you, my friend.
Love it. And listen, there's two schools of thought, and we'll explain like what yours is and what mine is, and slightly different and different for different occasions. But when we're talking about handcuffing, the two schools of thought, one says handcuff the players that are on your team. It creates a team that is protected from injuries, right? So I grab the handcuffs. I focus on drafting running backs that are easily cuffed. That is even more important to me than some other aspects of my starting running back. I just want to make sure whoever I'm taking that I've got a solid handcuff so my running back position is covered.
Yeah. So for those of you who have been living under a rock or are new to fantasy football, I'm not kind of goofing on you, but handcuffing is an old school term. Some don't like to use it anymore, and I understand why. But there's until someone comes up with a better way to describe handcuffing, it basically means you draft traditionally star running backs go in the first couple rounds of fantasy drafts. Usually by the end of round 2, there's not much left. Maybe at the beginning of round 3. And handcuffing is drafting their direct backup. So if it's an insurance policy, if you're running backs win you leagues, but they also get hurt the most often. And if you draft their backup, you have the, at least 80% of the production, maybe a little less. And that's what I was going to say. So let me just go over the 4 key points of handcuffing, and then we're going to count down our top 10 list of who we think the best handcuffs are. But this is going to set the stage a little bit. So, and I'll zip by this quick, Geek. First and foremost, is that player the actual handcuff? There's certain players where we think they might be the handcuff, but when that star running back, that 1A running back goes down, it's like, oh, they're doing a committee, or, oh, they're doing, it's not the guy who we thought. So we need to identify who the clear handcuff is. Number 2 is the quality of the player himself, right? So we think we have an idea of which backups are actually good and which ones are just kind of thrown into the mix. And that should also weigh partially on how you rank these guys, because we know, and then number 3 is the cost, the ADP. How high do you have to pay for the backup? So that should factor into our top 10 as well. And the last part is, can you store that handcuff in your lineup when the bye weeks get tough, right? So it's great to draft, and we'll talk about Alexander Mattison, but if Dalvin Cook is healthy through 5 weeks, and all of a sudden the buys hit, a lot of times I've seen him hit the waiver wire, whereas someone like Kareem Hunt, you could store in your lineup. So are we starting? Those 4 points are fair to form our rankings?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I'm least concerned about the last one, which is, do they have that flex value? Always good.
It's a factor.
It's definitely a factor. But yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Sometimes we're wrong. Like, we don't know. We want to know for sure this is the handcuff. What you don't want is a situation where we think, and I'll throw one of the names out, like a J.D. McKissick is the real. We're like, oh, he's the handcuff, and then Gibson goes down, and no, it's J.D.'s playing the same role. They brought in Brian Robinson. He's taking that role. Yeah. So we're like, oops. If you're going to spend your roster spot, your bench spot on a hand, he better be the real handcuff. So the best guys are the ones that we've seen. When the injury happens, the backup comes in and gets the full workload.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to count down the top 10 handcuffs. I rank them, and you could, I want to get your analysis on these guys, and you could say, yeah, I would have this guy around there, or I would have him higher or lower. That's fine. And at the end, if there's no one if there's a player that we didn't cover that you like, you could just add them in as honorable mentions. And okay, so I have the number 10 handcuff right now. Backup running back is Michael Carter. Michael Carter is, a 4th-round running back from last year. Breece Hall was drafted in the 2nd round. I've been on record on this podcast as saying that I would bet Michael Carter actually may outtouch Breece Hall in September. Michael Carter's like a 9th round pick. Go ahead. Is Michael Carter certainly in the mix for one of the best backups, handcuffs in fantasy football this year?
Yeah, Michael Carter also falls in the category of somebody who might have flex appeal on a week-over-week basis as well. And yeah, I mean, he's the perfect choice. You can get him very, very late in the draft. He's backing up Breece Hall. Okay, Breece Hall looks great, whatever. But I don't think it's going to be a 60. I don't think it's an 80-20 split even when Hall is in the game. And if Hall comes out, the Jets don't have anybody else on the team. So he would be kind of like an RB1 for your team if one injury away. Love it.
Yep. But I think more than one injury away. Like I agree. Yes, one injury away. He's back. I mean, he's back into being 5th round, 4th round value. But it's more about what do we know about rookie running backs? They have to prove they can pass block before they can get on the field. I mean, week 1, Michael Carter might have 14 touches. Breece Hall might have 8.
Then it's got the flex appeal. This is one of those plays where, yeah, you're going to play him. If it's a deep enough league, that's the perfect scenario because, yeah, he's going to start on your team even in weeks when Breece Hall is playing. I do think Hall is the starter and he's going to be the guy. But I think your argument is more of a reasonably good argument against drafting Hall where he's going because he's probably going a little higher than he should.
I mean, you're drafting Hall based on his upside, that if it hits in the 4th round, it's not unfair, right? I mean, a lot of times we see the first rookie running back come off the board in round 2. And if Breece Hall busts a long run in the preseason, that's exactly where he's going. All right, let's move on a little bit. I like that call. I think we're in agreement there that Michael Carter is certainly worth one of the top 10 handcuffs. You can get him in the 9th round. Melvin Gordon is number 9 on my list. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, again, what are we looking for? We're looking for guys, and I like that you've brought up these 2 guys because they both have flex appeal. Looking for guys that if the starter goes down, will basically be an RB1. Melvin Gordon, if Javonte Williams goes down, Melvin Gordon will be your RB1. He'll be a guy that will produce as well as any elite stud running back that you can name. You're going to be just as happy playing him as Leonard Fournette as you are Fournette or any of those type of guys in those games where he's starting. I love Gordon. And as you mentioned, Gordon is really a true 50-50 split. I think it'll be more 60-40 this season, but absolute startable running back in your flex in a deeper league every single week. He's the perfect backup. And you can get him kind of late. He's still got a little stank on him.
10th round, man. 8th to 10th round. Nobody wants him. And Javonte is actually starting to fall a little bit. I mean, when draft season started, before Melvin Gordon was signed, he was going in the top 5 overall. Then he fell to like the mid-2nd round. And now I'm starting to see him dip once or twice into the 3rd round, which is where you want to take him.
He will continue to drop. One of the phenomenon that we've observed, and it happens all the time. We start talking about a player, a situation changed, but players who are drafting now, and if you're hardcore, you're drafting best balls now, right? Players that are drafting, they're watching ADP, and it's almost like it pulls them. So it's like it slowly catches up. Javonte Williams is going way higher than he should. We saw what he did in a split last season. It's not that great. I like the offense of that team a little bit better, but Javonte Williams 2022 is exactly the same or almost exactly the same as Javonte Williams 2021. So that, again, don't love him. Love Melvin Gordon 10 rounds later.
So we're in agreement, though, that Melvin Gordon deserves a top 10 handcuff ranking.
Absolutely. He's a great one.
All right, I'm here with the Fantasy Football Geek from DFSARMY and, of course, the Sharp app. And today we're counting down the top 10 handcuff running backs for 2022. We started with Michael Carter, where it hit Melvin Gordon. I just want to let everybody know that this podcast is brought to you by Dynasty Owner. Do you love fantasy sports? Are you ready for a new challenge this year? Dynasty Owner is the new way to play fantasy football with real NFL salaries, adding the strategy of running an actual franchise. Dynasty Owner provides a unique and challenging experience that will test your skills as an owner and general manager. You will have complete control over your team's future. You can build through the draft, make trades, sign free agents, and manage your team's salary cap. Can you create a dynasty of champions? Sign up now at dynastyowner.com and start building your dynasty today. All right, Geek. Number 8 on our top 10 handcuff. You know what? I have Isaiah Spiller there. Let's talk about him.
Isaiah Spiller, rookie, backup, but the team is great. There's a little
hasn't
bit of
won the job yet, though. Has not won the job.
There's a little bit of risk there. There are other names on that team. Roundtree. I think Josh Kelly's still there.
Yep. No
So,
Justin Jackson. No
Justin Jackson hasn't
not
been
been
re-signed. It looks like, listen, I think Isaiah Spiller is the Justin Jackson replacement. Jackson has had those injury problems. For a backup, you can't be hurt all the time if you're a backup, says. You got one job. Be here to back up the man. And if you're always hurt, you ain't working. This is not working. You don't even start, bro.
Yeah, well, this is what I like about Isaiah Spiller is that he was, RB1, RB2 pre-draft rookie. Then he had, terrible combine with lack of participation, perceived injury. But he was productive in college, gets drafted to the right team. Austin Eckler asked the team to get some relief, which means that they were not happy with the running backs they had on the roster. Isaiah Spiller, only 20 years old, so that's why I like him a little bit more than the market in Dynasty. I've seen Isaiah Spiller actually get pushed up to the beginning of the second round. I know there's a lot of,
I think that's, speculative. I think that's speculative.
I agree. You wouldn't want to take him over like someone like a Jahan Dotson or anyone like that. But in redraft, I think he's one of the best handcuffs. First of all, you don't have to pay a premium pick for him. You're talking double-digit rounds again. And even if Austin Eckler's healthy, you have double-digit touchdown upside. If they're going to use him in the red zone, that's why I like drafting him, because it's again, there's a lot of risk there, but he's deserving of one of the top 10 handcuff spots. You could easily see a situation where he has like 700 yards for the season, 650 yards, but like 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's going to be an injury away. And again, this has been a feature of some of the names that you've brought up so far. I think Isaiah Spiller will have standalone value. You can play him in the flex anyway, because the aforementioned Austin Eckler has requested relief. This is the guy they brought in to do it. I think he's more speculative, like I said, than these other names we know for sure are locked down in the backup role. But the upside is larger. And Austin Eckler. You and I, there's a debate on if Austin Eckler is or isn't injury prone. We can have I don't even want to bring up the discussion. You got hurt here, you got there.
Well, he hasn't really missed a lot of games over the last, few years. It's that he had a very unusually high rushing touchdown output last year. I think previous to that, his rushing touchdowns, not his passing touchdowns, were like 3.
Well, he had a bad year. We'll regress a little bit for sure there. Yeah, you put Isaiah Spiller's perfectly fine. This is a spot where I want to make the argument of why you need to. Your bench in your redraft league needs to be filled up with guys like this. If you want to win redraft, this is how you win it. Okay, think to last season and the season before and the season before. These are little lotto tickets, right? Assign a 20% probability that a starting running back gets hurt. By the way, the probability is higher than that. But let's say you sign a 20% probability that any perceived starting running back is going to get hurt. If you have 5 of these backups, and the probability is higher than 20%, but if you have 5, then you're now in a scenario where one of your backup running backs is going to emerge as a starting elite kind of stud or an RB1 level starter that you picked up in the 11th round. That's how you win your league. Get 2 of those guys starting on your team that you picked up in those late rounds. It's almost impossible to do that with wide receivers. They don't elevate based off an injury the way that running backs do. So if you're trying to win your league, I just took this guy to bring this point out. This is how you do it. Load your bench up with one hit away running backs like the ones we're talking about today. So I'm using I used my Spiller time for that.
Yeah, and you know what? Well, this actually brings up another interesting point, because you and I see differently on this part, where you like to cuff the running backs that you've drafted. So, for example, if you draft Austin Eckler at pick 7, you're going to be looking to get Isaiah Spiller, whereas we've talked about this offline, try to get other people's handcuffs. And the reason is that, let's say, for example, I draft, let's use those guys. I take Eckler. I'm going to try to maybe grab Tony Pollard. So if Zeke gets hurt, now I have 2 running backs. I'm not clogging up 2 roster spots with one upside. My upside now is split into 2. So if I have Eckler, he stays healthy, and then I have Alexander Mattison and Dalvin Cook goes down. Now I have 2 starting running backs. So that's my philosophy. I actually try to draft other people's running backs, given that in a typical league, you have about 5 or 6 bench spots. Obviously, in a dynasty league, which we talk a lot about on this podcast, when you have 20 bench spots, you want your one-to-one backup. You have all the room. So
no, see, I disagree with your approach. I don't mind taking other people's handcuffs as well, but you got to handcuff your own guys. Critical, because the whole point to me, season long, especially when you're in a regular league, and again, you can differentiate this approach for giant tournaments. When we're talking about the NFFC, right, or Bestball tournaments, not leagues, tournaments. If I'm going up against 100 other teams, 1,000 other teams, then I need that extra little bit of upside. Actually does help, and that approach mathematically.
You're saying that in where it's a top heavy prize, and it's not just 6 teams trying to make the playoffs, that you're going to now proactively take other people's handcuffs. But in a traditional season long league where you have 5 bench spots, you're more comfortable taking the one-to-one backup.
That's right. You don't need as much upside going up against 12. You need the upside going up against 12,000 people. Now, basically, if my Christian McCaffrey goes down, I'm out anyway. Donta Foreman is not leading my NFFC team to a championship when I lost my first round and my third round pick, right? So you can throw that team away in a tournament. It doesn't matter. But if I'm trying to win a league, I could still win that league when my running back, because I just draft smarter than the other 11 people in my league. So it's a different approach based on how many opponents we have.
Yeah. And not to belabor the point, but again, it's like with 5 bench spots, I don't want to tie up 2 spots with insurance. I like having a little more upside.
We will always disagree.
Which is fine. There's two different ways to do it. You got to pick the approach that you're comfortable with, experiment, different leagues. Most people now.
I will throw out that these names that you've mentioned so far, and we want to keep hammering through, I'm sure. People don't like to hear us yaps, but with the name you mentioned so far, they're all functional flex plays.
Yeah.
So those even more so could be backing up their own player because they're functional flex plays anyway. Like, hey, I could just, in a deep enough league, I'm just playing Michael Carter. It's not like some garbage on my bench that I have to just sit there on the bench and wait.
Yeah, we had it, and that was a question that we got from the chat, which underlines the point you were just talking about. Sean had asked about what if it's a larger league, a 16-team league? Yeah, anyone, and that goes back to the point we said in the very beginning of the podcast, is that if you can store these handcuffs, air quote handcuffs, in your lineup, that adds to their value. And that's why we would rank these guys with more value versus, even though we haven't gotten there yet, we're going to get to Alexander Mattison, who's probably high up on this list. You could argue that he should be lower because he's just sitting there, and when bye weeks hit, and if you might have to cut him, so you've wasted a 10th and 9th round pick on a player like that has no value until disaster strikes. So there is a balance there. So let's just review for everyone that right now we're counting on the top 10 handcuffs for fantasy football in 2022. Number 10 was Michael Carter. Number 9 was Isaiah Spiller, the rookie running back on the Chargers. And I think that's all we got. Oh, no, and Melvin Gordon, we said, was, Mike Carter was 10, Gordon was 9, Spiller was 8, something like that, right?
No particular order.
Okay, the next guy that I have on our list is Khalil Herbert, the second-year running back on the Chicago Bears. I mean, this guy is the definition of a handcuff, where
you love that when Montgomery went down last season, Khalil got the full workload, and that's everything that we want. You want to make sure that the player is going to be, if I'm wasting a bench spot on you, then when your opportunity arises, you need to pay off for me.
Yeah.
And we know that Khalil Herbert will, because we've seen him do it. They gave him the full workload last season, 3 downs, 30 touches, the whole deal. So
he falls more into the Alexander Mattison category than he does into the stash in your lineup category. And even when Khalil Herbert last year saved your season as a bridge running back, I mean, he performed as a top 14, 12 running back those couple weeks that Montgomery was out. We thought for sure there was a consensus feeling that he earned more of the touches, and that didn't happen. So We're going into this season, and everything can change. We all know that, but we're going into this season assuming that Khalil Herbert is an Alexander Mattison type. So that's why I have him a little bit lower on the list. I would almost maybe swap him and Carter now that I'm rethinking about it. I have Carter as a stashable in your lineup player because, like, I'll repeat it again just so everyone hears, is that if week 5 hits and Montgomery's still standing and the bye weeks are, the crushing bye weeks happen, you're probably going to have to drop Khalil Herbert. So that's what's the advantage. That's where you and I differ, is that, these Michael Carter types you could hold. So
still, I don't need to hold him. Still, for every week that he's on my bench, I'm giving myself a dice roll chance that was the week that your bench, and I'm just philosophically, for the RotoWire community out there, you are watching, you want to win your leagues, you should always be thinking about, even if you have to drop some of these names the next week, your bench should be filled with these types of players. Always.
Yeah.
Drop some. Hey, maybe you'll get him back. Maybe you won't. But who's this wide receiver that you're stashing that's going to emerge? It's not going to happen. It's the running back that can save your team. So I'm going to give you one of my tricks. Back in the day, when you used to have to have kickers on your team and defenses. Remember that? Old school fantasy football, right? Don't play with kickers anymore, guys. Come on. So when you're gonna trigger
people, there's a lot of
I know. I don't care. I say it. I don't care. Don't play with kickers. Enough. So I'm the Urban Meyer of fantasy football. Like, hey, hey, kicker, kick him in the butt, right? So no kickers. Refuse to learn their names. I'm just thinking about the Urban Meyer and what a horrible person.
Go ahead. Get to your...
All right. So what I used to do is I would leave the kicker off the team. I wouldn't even have one. I wouldn't have a kicker. I had an extra spot on my bench, and I would hold a backup running back in that spot up until the season starts. So that 3-week period after you draft your team, but until the actual season begins, I wouldn't even bother with a kicker.
Yeah, I
no
like
kicker
that.
on my team.
Yahoo used to allow you to do that. Yahoo software. Other softwares didn't allow you to do that.
But the Yahoo software, right? Back in the day. Again, I don't play with kickers anymore. But I used to hold one because, hey, you never know. One hit away. Every single game, every preseason game, every game, it's a lotto ticket that one of these running backs is going to get hurt. It happens like 10% of the time. The frequency of injury is higher than our brain wants to allow us to believe. So always be holding these guys on your bench.
All right, we're continuing on with the number. That's a good point. I like all that. I think that, even in that, the period of waivers runs on a Tuesday or Wednesday. And then there's those 3 or 4 days where a lot of stuff happens. I mean, a couple of years ago, it was COVID. I mean, there's injuries that happen. So those are times that you could, that you can get the Khalil Herberts where it's not even clear. Sometimes you won't even hear about a Montgomery injury until midweek. All right. The next guy I have on our list at number 6 is A.J. Dillon. Now, A.J. Dillon, again, you're going to have to spend a premium pick on him. That's why he's this low.
Yeah.
As a handcuff. He's a standalone player. There's an
opportunity cost to Dillon above just holding the bench spot. And the opportunity cost is you actually have to take him where there are still other good wide receivers available.
You're taking him in the 5th or 6th round. So you're not, when you draft A.J. Dillon, the running back on the Green Bay Packers, you're not thinking of him as a pure handcuff. You're not going to want to take Aaron Jones in the late 1st, mid-2nd round, and then spend the 6th round pick on A.J. Dillon. But he does qualify as he's probably the 1B. He probably should be a little lower based on value, but I'm all for A.J. Dillon. If you go early wide receiver, you probably could start him. He's probably going to be ranked as a top 24 week 1 running back as it is. He has that goal line equity. So that's why he falls at number 6 for us. We like, there's going to be a lot of players like this right now that you have to take in that 5th or 6th round range that have just no ADP value as handcuffs, but have value as standalone players.
So for me, guys like this never end up on my team. They just don't. For exactly the reason, as much as I love A.J. Dillon as a backup play, he will be an RB1 top 6 performer, not even top 12, like top 6 performer, if Aaron Jones goes out. But it's the cost. The cost is very, very high. Here, we're taking a player that, hey, he's got standalone value, but it's mediocre with Aaron Jones in there. You're not like, oh, yeah, I can't wait to play A.J. Dillon this week. And the issue is the opportunity cost for Dillon is giving up on a decent to pretty good wide receiver. Who are the wide receivers in the A.J. Dillon zone?
Brandon Cooks, Allen Robinson.
Yeah. So I want Allen Robinson on my team.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
I want Juju on my team. these types of running backs will not make any teams that I draft this season, but belongs on the list more so just because of the elite backup nature of it. There's where's Ramondre Stevenson go? Because he reminds me of the same thing. It goes a little too high for me to ever actually wind up with him on a team.
He's not on our top 10 list, but we'll add him into the honorable mentions.
Throw him in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he could end up being the starter. Who knows? So just to review, number 10, Michael Carter. Number 9, Melvin Gordon. 8, Isaiah Spiller. 7 was Khalil Herbert. 6 was Dillon. So now we're into the top 5. And just to remind everyone, when we talk about the top 5 handcuffs, it doesn't necessarily mean these are the top 5 best players. They represent decent value where you're drafting them. Can you stash them in their lineup? Some of them have it, some of them don't. And then are they the direct one-to-one backup? So I put Darrell Williams previously on the Chiefs and now on the Arizona Cardinals. He will be backing up James Conner. James Conner was never a picture of health, stayed incredibly healthy last year, but he's always, we like the Arizona offense. This seems like a one-to-one backup. I know they drafted Keontae Ingram, but he was like a 6th-round pick. I mean, he's a rookie. I mean, it's a long shot. Darrell Williams is one of those players. I mean, he probably helped you win a playoff game last year. He had like 18, 20 points in 2 consecutive games. He got the stamp of approval from Patrick Mahomes to the Arizona Cardinals, says this is a guy you want on your team. It makes you think that why didn't they re-sign him? But okay, they took Ronald Jones. No big deal. But we saw for fantasy, Darrell Williams could do it all. He's not a dynamic running back, but if James Conner goes down, and James Conner, like you said already, is not been a picture of health, do you agree that Williams, who you can get in the 17th round or, in sharper leagues like in the 13th and 15th round, he belongs in the top 5 as a handcuff?
Yeah, so the only red flag for Darrell Williams, now, everything you said is spot on. James Conner, everybody wants the handcuff to James Conner. Number one, because that role is very lucrative in terms of fantasy points, being the Cardinals' full-time back. So, yes, of course. Now, the only red flag with Darrell Williams for me is, and you mentioned him, is it 100% that he'll get what if they end up really liking Keontae Ingram? So, unlike a Khalil Herbert, where we've already seen it from the team, or Alexander Mattison, we know what they're going to do. We don't absolutely know for sure that Darrell Williams might not make the team. We don't know.
Yep. But it's also his draft costs pushes him back into the top 5. Like,
yes, but the fact that you're getting him with your absolute last pick in the draft,
15th round, the 20th round.
So it costs you nothing. He's the perfect guy to stash. And again, he is a league winner if he comes in as a starter, but I would say his if I had to assign a probability of him being a locked in, gonna get all the touches if the starter goes down, if I had to assign a probability to that relative to Alexander Mattison or Khalil Herbert or AJ Dillon, I would have him lower. Not to say still a very high probability that happened, but it would be a lower probability than those other guys.
It's funny you brought up Khalil Herbert. So I have him lower on our list. He's like 7. And I have Williams at 5. And it's almost like look at the checklist. So if you talk about, is he the correct running back that's going to get the thrust into the starting role? Khalil Herbert gets the check mark. Darrell Williams, B- there, B-. But also, is the player ahead of them more or less likely to get injury? It's so hard to tell, but Montgomery, a little bit built, a little more solid.
No. Way higher. We all, like I said, everybody, the whole fantasy community is like, I need the backup to James Conner, right? We're all, who is that? Like everybody's getting excited about Keontae Ingram before the Williams signing for that reason. We're like, we don't care who it is. Just give me someone. And that's there's for good reason.
Okay. We're going to get into the rest of the top 4 and then a little bit more handcuff discussion, but we're going to take for the podcast audience, just a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this message. And we're back. See, the YouTube audience didn't have to wait too long. And if you like videos like this, consider hitting the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you don't already. And if you hit the notification bell, you'll get notified. We put up new videos every day. Right now, you could try RotoWire free for 2 days. You can see behind the paywall. Go to rotowire.com/try. And we are I'm here with the Fantasy Football Geek from the Sharp app. at the which is one of my favorite apps on my phone for sports betting. It's the favorite. It's not one of the favorite. It's my favorite. And of course, our DFS Army. Everybody knows the Geek from DFS Army. There's no one that does DFS better and has more winners than DFS Army. All right, we'll get to more of that. So we're now inside. We're counting down the top 10 handcuffs for 2022 fantasy football based on a whole litany of factors. We won't go over those again, but we're in the top 4 now, Geek. So these are the premium handcuffs, and it's okay to disagree here. There's some good players. They all have issues at this point because they're not free. These are players that are going to cost you a pretty pick, but they have that upside. Number 4, I have Deontay Foreman, man. As you know, Christian McCaffrey, the market is in on him as a first round pick. I am not. Separate conversation. I've seen
Baker Mayfield. It's about to happen.
Okay, but we'll get to that tangent. So Foreman looked great as a prospect, had an Achilles, which then came back with Tennessee last year, played really well. Christian McCaffrey, who's had 2 lost seasons, it seems like they're going to scale back the workload. Foreman is built like a mini Derrick Henry, and he's a good player. So we could see some standalone value here. We're not sure, but if McCaffrey does go down, we already saw enough of Chuba Hubbard to know that Foreman would likely be thrust into a 15-touch role. Talk about Foreman a little bit. Do you like that he's inside the top 4, given his draft cost is like the 14th or 16th round?
Everything about the Donta Foreman play is great. This is a guy that when you see his name coming up on the ADP zone and you're drafting, he maybe even is a round away, take him. Because exactly as you said, Chuba Hubbard was just not good. Like, there is a talent issue there, right? So every once in a while, I don't care about talent at the running back position, but it has to be at a certain level. He wasn't there.
Yeah, and the team wasn't good enough to have an average running back. They needed someone that has a little bit of power, a little bit of juice.
That's right.
He's got speed. Special. He has speed. That's all that Chuba had.
Yeah, it just didn't work out. So, and you're right. Christian McCaffrey goes down. Listen, I don't know what to make of it. I love Christian McCaffrey, and I think he'll be fine this year, right?
Would you take him at pick 2? Are you taking where are you taking Christian McCaffrey in your redraft league? Forget best ball. In your redraft league, where are you comfortable taking him?
Probably pick 4 or 5 overall. I mean, he's still the man. He's still the man. So, but I mean, I'm taking Cooper Kupp ahead of him.
Who else?
I'm certainly taking Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp. I have a hard time even with the DeAndre Swift.
I mean, Swift is going in the 2nd round.
I mean, it's ridiculous. So,
it's the guys that are going ahead of him are like the 2 young receivers, Jefferson, Chase. Sometimes Najee Harris is a decision point, but that's
let me put it this way: I'm taking McCaffrey ahead of Austin Eckler. I'm taking him ahead of Derrick Henry still.
Yeah.
As far as the wide receivers, my philosophy this season is I'm going a little more wide receiver heavy early than I have in past years. But again, Christian McCaffrey versus Chase, for example.
Yeah.
That's a hard decision point. I'll take Jefferson though ahead of him.
Okay. All right. So we agree then that Foreman, given his costs, given his skill set, and then you wanted to talk a little bit about Baker Mayfield. Does that change if Baker Mayfield comes to Carolina? You like that?
It helps them. That's why I wanted to mention it. We don't want running backs on just the losingest of losing teams. When your team is absolutely awful, and every team helmed by Sam Darnold is absolutely terrible, and you mentioned it with Chuba, because Darnold was there and the offense was so inept, there were no touchdowns to go around. So your production drops off. If we get Baker Mayfield, listen, love him or hate him, he's a National Football League quarterback, right? So he's at least a competent NFL QB.
And Andy Dalton.
And running backs have excelled with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback. So we've seen running backs do well with him as the placeholder. It's a much better scenario for both Christian McCaffrey and for Donta Foreman if Baker does go to Carolina, which I think he will. Logic tells me that deal is happening.
Yes. I mean, you think it'll be a trade, or do you think he'll have to be cut and signed or something?
Mini trade. They'll get like a 6th or a 5th rounder. The Panthers need to pay a little bit in order for the Browns to eat like a certain portion of the salary. They'll get it figured out.
All right. So that should happen soon then, if it's going to happen, being that training camp is coming up.
They want it. I listen, Matt Rule does not survive the season if he goes in with Sam Darnold. He probably doesn't survive the season with Baker, but next season with Baker, but he doesn't survive this season with Darnold at QB. They must make a move. Although I think, and I think they're too scared to wait for Jimmy G.
Yeah, it sounds like if the Panthers don't at least make the playoffs or have a winning record, that it could be the end of Matt Rule. So they can't, that's why Matt Corral at quarterback, it'd be good for a developmental team, but not for, that's why Desmond Ridder probably has a shot, because Atlanta's not expected to win. Whereas the Panthers, it's time to show a pulse. So I agree with you there.
Risk it. They will not risk it.
So let's get into the top 3 handcuffs. But just quick message before that: Reality Sports, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy teams like an NFL general manager. It's time to go see what all the buzz is about in the Dynasty fantasy football community. Free agency, multi-year contracts, rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extension. Think this sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online fantasy front office is that it doesn't take any more time than your normal league. It just requires more strategy. If you think you're among the fantasy elite, well, it's time. This is the platform for you. Still not sure? You could test out our general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code RotoWire to receive 10% off your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, we're counting down the top 10 handcuffs for 2022 fantasy football. I think this applies for both redraft and dynasty fantasy football. At number 3, this I don't know if this is going to upset some people, but I have Tony Pollard. He's not 1 or 2. I have him at 3. You go first. Talk about first of all, do you agree with this ranking? Do you think he's more valuable than this? And then I will bring sobriety to this argument.
I mean, the big thing about Tony Pollard is he brings every week kind of a flex appeal. And more importantly, though, if Zeke does get hurt, he comes in and he becomes an elite super stud, which we're all excited kind of to see, but we haven't really seen it yet. So I do agree. I do think, again, Tony Pollard is another one of these costs you some serious draft capital to get him, guys.
6th, 7th round, 8th round.
Yeah, latest, I mean, again, there's some pretty good.
That's where I want to take my quarterback. I want to take my quarterback in the 7th or 8th round.
That's right. There's some pretty good quarterback. On the board at this point, there's some pretty good wide receivers still left. So he is an opportunity cost backup, but Tony Pollard is as elite of a RB1 as we have on this list. If Zeke goes down, problem is Zeke doesn't go down very much. He gets dinged up, but he's always out there. He's one of his superpowers is he's always out there. He gets hurt, but he keeps playing. It's very frustrating.
He doesn't miss games. Zeke doesn't miss games. Yeah, they're financially invested in Zeke for this year and for next year. Certainly for this year. Tony Pollard, to this point, has had, I think he's going into year 4. He's had 1 clarified start where Zeke was out and he was thrust into the lineup. Now, he's had a couple of useful fantasy weeks, but you weren't sure you could play him. It was cleanup duty at the end. So through his career, I agree with you. He has top 12, top 10, top 5 upside if we had a clarified start. And you said it. I'll echo it. Zeke, one of his superpowers is he doesn't miss games. Now, when I was talking with some people offline, they said, well, he doesn't miss games until he does, just like Derrick Henry. Zeke is 26. He's not 30. He's not 29. He's had a lot of carries, but I'm not going to bet on Zeke missing games. I mean, I think he's played 15 games in every professional season except for the one where he got suspended. Tony Pollard, I'm not paying the freight because by week 6, week 7, you're going to have to drop him anyway. I'm going to bet on Zeke not getting hurt here, but that upside is tantalizing. My philosophy with Pollard is wait till the person who drafts him has to drop him, and then you get him. Now, there is some talk this year that Pollard is going to be used as a receiver in the slot, being that they don't have Amari Cooper.
Do not fall for this. Every running back, the same nonsense happens every preseason. I can't take it anymore. No, he won't. They don't do this. It never happens. Kareem Hunt. Well, we're talking about using him. He's only running pass. This never happens. It's like, don't believe when you hear a running back is going to be used more as a wide receiver. Ignore it.
Right. Well, here's why, and I agree with your. Let me start with I agree with what you just said, but this is why I could see it. We have seen Tony Pollard used in limited action actually be good by efficiency metrics and his 3-down capability, but no Maury Cooper gone. Michael Gallup out for at least till Halloween, if not till Thanksgiving. He had a late season injury. The CD Lamb is going to get peppered. We like Dalton Schultz, not his athleticism, but we like his opportunity, just like we did last year. And then all they have after that is a 3rd-round rookie and Jalen Tolbert, who a lot of people think is pro ready, I guess. I don't know, but it's still a rookie. It's the other receivers they have on that team are Noah Brown, who performed well on Thanksgiving. You know, we had but
showdown.
Yeah,
Showdown
there you go. There you go. So Cedric Wilson's gone. You could see the case for Pollard usage ticking up, but betting on it is probably silly. I agree with you there.
I will tell you that much like A.J. Dillon, Tony Pollard is one of those players that will end up on absolutely zero of my teams.
Yeah.
Because I never waste the opportunity cost on a backup running back when there are still good wide receivers and tight ends. I mean, you're getting your TE1. It's at that time, like you're getting a pretty good, like a TJ Hawkinson's on the board still. And you're like, I'm not taking the backup running back at that point. Personally, that's just not how I play. Somebody always takes Pollard ahead of where I would, similar to Dillon. I just never end up with guys that cost this much, but aren't actual starters.
Yeah. And if Tony Pollard does, break out as a standalone value, or if Zeke gets hurt, then you bet correctly. I'm just not betting on it based on what I've seen with Zeke. We can go into this a million times. So that's why I have him at number 3. But his upside is certainly number 1, right? So I think
he's the starter. He is your RB1.
Yeah.
I always think of the DraftKings salary. That's what I get in my head is like his DraftKings salary goes up like over $7K. Like
Number 2, we're getting down to the end here. I like the price on Kareem Hunt this year, to back up Nick Chubb. Now, in the past, you've always had to pay, the last 2 seasons, a 5th-round pick. He's dropping I think he goes after Tony Pollard in a lot of drafts. So you can get him in the 7th, 8th round. Now, why don't we like Pollard in the 7th or 8th round, but we like Kareem Hunt? Is because what we talked about at the top of the podcast. He's actually playable every week. He has a definite role that involves pass catching. I always think Nick Chubb goes a little too high in these drafts. I don't like him as a 2nd-round pick.
Nope.
But I think Kareem Hunt's going too low this year. So he has now vaulted to the top of the handcuff rankings for 2022 because he's stashable in your lineup. And even if Nick Chubb doesn't get hurt, you don't have to drop him when bye weeks hit. And he has that top 10 upside should Nick Chubb go down. This is an ideal handcuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's right there. This is the guy that's going to be the locked-in starter. We know he has a lot of talent. We know he catches passes. New quarterback, maybe better situation for the Browns' offense than has been in the past. I don't know that, when we're going to get our Deshaun Watson games or if we're going to get them, but new quarterback situation potentially over there. But yeah, we've already seen it. We know what he could do. And Kareem Hunt has more of a role on the team than anybody else that we've mentioned. Outside of maybe, I kind of think Michael Carter will have the same role for the Jets, in fairness. But
Melvin Gordon will have a nice role too.
And Melvin Gordon definitely has that role. So actually, there's a few of these guys that we know we can start as a flex play, and Kareem Hunt is absolutely on that list, deeper league especially.
Yeah, like I said, the price this year is right, so I'm in on it. All right, we're at the number 1 handcuff, and this kind of contradicts a lot of the things we talked about. But it's so hard not to. I mean, Alexander Mattison is basically 90% of your 1st-round pick, and the cost is the 9th or 10th round. I think that he's worth holding on to, being that Dalvin Cook can probably only be reasonably projected for 13 and a half games. And you don't want your first pick to go down. So now I'm going to backtrack and go to where you said, where Dalvin Cook is such a high upside player. If we knew Dalvin Cook was playing 17 games, he's pick 2. I mean, he might even be pick 1, right? I mean, he's got that much upside. So this is a delicate dance, but I like the price on Alexander Mattison. Take it away.
If you're taking Alexander Mattison and you don't have Dalvin Cook on your team, you're sniping someone in your league. You're screwing them over right there. He belongs with the Dalvin Cook owner, and the Dalvin Cook owner has to take him a little ahead of ADP. Like, his ADP is where it is because the Dalvin Cook owner is always taking him a little ahead of where he should be.
Right.
That's why it's so high. If you don't have Dalvin Cook, I mean, Alexander Madison's going to start a few games this year. He'll fill in for a few games. It's going to happen.
Yeah,
but it really should go to the Dalvin Cook owner. But yes, we've already seen what Mattison does when he gets the reins. He's better than Dalvin Cook in some ways because Dalvin Cook still cedes a couple of touches every game to Alexander Mattison. He's
not playable though. Not playable.
No, not playable. But like when you go into a game where Cook is out, the touch expectation is higher for Alexander Mattison than it would have been for Cook starting that game because there's no Mattison there to vulture touches. Where Mattison does get some touches in general, there's no backup to him. So he's got an even better outlook when he starts than Dalvin Cook. He's great. But opportunity cost, he really does belong with the Dalvin Cook owner, unless the Dalvin Cook owner is stupid and doesn't take the handcuff where he should.
Here's a couple other Alexander Mattison things you should keep in mind. Like in Dynasty leagues, for example, the chances are they're not going to re-sign him next year. So Alexander Madison's going to be an unrestricted free agent. They did draft Ty Chandler. They do have the running back that they drafted in the 4th round. Someone mentioned him in the chat. What's his name? It's like Kenny Anawangu, something like that, right? So, but my feeling is that Alexander Mattison is super young too. He's going to be a 24-year-old unrestricted free agent. So he's somebody interesting that a team could pick up next year if they believe in his talent and skills.
Are you trading for him or getting rid of him in Dynasty?
That's a great question. So I would be more to go get him, and it's regardless if I have Dalvin Cook or not, only because, and again, I'm not going to overpay. I'm not going to give a 1st-round pick, although it might end up being worth it, is because he's so young and he has demonstrated very good skill in the NFL. So he's going to, a team might not treat him like a second contract running back. He has low mileage and he's still 24 years old. So if they give him a 3-year contract, he's only 24 to 27. That's right in where you want your running backs, to be.
Don't mind paying a late 2nd rounder.
Well, you're not going to get him for that. So of course you don't mind, but if you want him, I would say the point where someone's going to consider it. Let's say you knew for a fact you had 202 next year. That would be, I think, the point where you have to think about it.
I'm not paying that much. I'm paying a late 2nd rounder this year.
All right. So what if you have him? Would you release him for 210? No.
I'll give you a name and an honorable mention for our list that I would sell him for if I didn't have Dalvin Cook on my team.
Okay.
Again, if I have Dalvin Cook, I'm not selling him. I need him. If I don't have, so I've got a few honorable mention handcuffs. Number 1, Rachaad White. So
Tampa Bay Buccaneer,
rookie running back,
drafted in the 3rd round.
There we go. Picked in the 3rd round, draft capital galore. Backing up Leonard Fournette, Uncle Lenny, love Uncle Lenny, but hey, listen, sorry, has had some injury things happen to him in the past. Rumors about not in the best shape coming into camp. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Guys get hurt all the time. Rachaad White.
Well, here's Rachaad White. We're not even sure if he's the backup. That's the problem with him. And he's also a little bit of an older rookie. He's going to, he's 23 going on 24. But
he's going just to compare it. He's going 1.5, 2.5, 2.6 in a Dynasty rookie draft. That's about all right. I'll give Mattison for that guy. I'll switch it up. I'll get a younger backup. Yeah. Like if I have Mattison, I might be willing to sell around there.
Mattison. I'd rather have Mattison.
Mid-second. But yeah, Rachaad White, elite backup.
I'll disagree with that because I still think that rookies don't have an easy time getting on the field in Tom Brady offenses. They still have Keyshawn Vaughn, who by all accounts has looked better in camp this year, and they still have Giovanni Bernard. Say what you want, that guy is like he's having like a Frank Gore type of longevity in his career. Those are players that are going to stay on the field. And Rachaad White for 2022 at best looks like a committee back. I could be wrong. He's got some good pass catching chops on him. I'm a little more worried about him. You've been high on him, and there's a lot of smart people that are.
Yeah,
so
like
I will see you there.
I like his pass catching ability. I think they need to cut Gio though. If he cuts Gio, I'll feel even better about it.
Yeah, well, then the situation changes. Yeah. We'll throw a couple more players out here with the last few minutes. We'll just lightning round though. We're not going to expound on it. So that was our top 10 handcuffs. If there's any handcuffs that you think we missed on, feel free to put them in the chat. Again, if you like videos like this, please consider hitting the like button, subscribe, and to the channel, RotoWire Fantasy Football channel. Also, Geek is here to promote the Sharp app. Everyone should go download the Sharp app. Great sports betting app that you're going to want with the NBA Finals coming to a close, and then of course the football season. And he's also here to promote DFS Army. There is nobody on the planet at this point that doesn't understand that DFS Army is the premier place to go to get better at DFS. Both experienced players and new players alike will benefit from the coaching there. Do you have a code that you're throwing out for people that want to sample DFS Army?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go check out DFS Army, use my promo code Geek. Whenever you sign up, you get 10% off your monthly dues. We have weekly, baseball individual packages for just baseball or whatever individual sport. NASCAR is going strong. PGA is going strong right now. Even League of Legends and esports stuff going crazy right now. As odd as that sounds. Use promo code Geek. You get 10% off over at DFS Army for a VIP. Covers everything.
Sounds good.
And at Sharp, I got to tell you, our AI machine learning neural net betting model. All right. We've got a team of MIT engineers that would do nothing all day except work on betting models and work on this machine learning AI system that we have. This thing has been crushing NBA in particular. It called Boston to win the whole championship this season before the playoffs began. It was been on Boston. I'm like, Boston. We all bet Boston. I think it's coming true.
All right. Well, they got to win, to stay alive. All right. We're going to throw out a couple more quick, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. We're talking about handcuffs. If you're joining us live or skimming the video, we counted down the top 10 handcuffs for fantasy football in 2022. Nyheim Hines, I know you don't love him, but he has a pass catching role. You're thumbs down on him?
I'm thumbs down. I do not believe that Nyheim Hines gets a full workload, even if Jonathan Taylor goes out. That's not the kind of, he's a fine kind of flex play every once in a while, but not my kind of guy. Because I don't think he gets the full workload if Taylor goes down.
All right. Hassan Haskins, the rookie running back that was drafted in the 4th round by the Tennessee Titans. You like him. We like him. I like him. Derrick Henry, they might scale back his workload a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Yes, thumbs up on Haskins.
You cash it on your bench. He's the last spot. You took him. He's the guy with the kicker. Until you draft the kicker, you're holding him there. You're dropping him. You're picking him back up throughout the whole offseason. Just, hey, let me try to get. Anytime you have a little space on your bench, you pick him back up. He'll be on waivers for a lot of the season for you. You're just going to pick those guys up. Keep them stashed on your bench. Love him.
Yeah,
but you don't need to have him on your team. He's like I said, you'll drop him and pick him back up a lot.
Our guy Sean in the chat said Jamal Williams. I definitely like that one. Again,
I can't believe. I think Jamal Williams belongs in the top 10 grouping. Listen, this guy's getting the workload. If Swift goes down, that's it. It's going to be him. So we didn't see it last year. So our brain is kind of like forgetting that Jamal Williams is there getting 40% of the touches already. He can catch passes. He can pass protect. We know, and he has the size to be a full workload running back. Love Jamal Williams. If you have Swift, by the way, a must. Don't even drop him. But Jamal Williams is one of those guys also that he'll probably be on the bench in shallower leagues, not on the bench, on waivers, where you're going to pick him up, drop him a lot over the course of an offseason.
The reason I don't like Jamal Williams, I intentionally did not include him in my top 10. I mean, he's worthy of consideration. Was when Swift did miss games last year, it was Craig Reynolds. It was, guys like that. He's not someone worth drafting in 16, 18 round drafts, in my judgment. He could be a pickup person at some point. It's one of those where you pick up all of the backups when there's no clear backup 1-to-1, and then you see who pans out. Last year was Craig Reynolds. This year it could be Jamal Williams. All right, everybody.
I got one more to mention.
Right, you better hurry up.
I threw the name out there before, but Ramondre Stevenson belongs on this list. If Harris goes, and you're right, he might be the starter there. We don't know, but if Ramondre ever comes in and gets a full workload, this Patriots team produces massive points to the running back position. And if Harris goes down, Ramondre will be an RB1. If Ramondre goes down, Harris becomes an RB1 because it works both ways with these two guys. But yeah, on that Patriots team, Ramondre, great, good player.
Yeah, and he's adding to his pass catching chops by all reports this offseason. All right, Geek, I appreciate you coming on. Just remember, everyone, go check out RotoWire. Unlock that paywall for free for a couple days. Go back there and check out all of that. You can go to rotowire.com/try. We'll be back again next week with another fantasy football podcast. I got RotoWire's Joe Bartle coming on, and we're going to talk some Dynasty, some fantasy football. And of course, we will have the Geek back on. Geek has started a fantasy football YouTube channel. I want everyone to go. I'm going to link that in the video description here. Go check out Geek's season-long fantasy football content, some of my favorite as well. All right, everybody. Until next week, good luck in your leagues, and we'll see you